drink of wisdom, I'm impatient to receive a sign. I move forward with my senses open. Imperfection to be my crime. In humility, I will listen. We're all swimming to the other side.
Welcome to Bridges Program. This is Sunday on the Front Stoop. We are now on the water on a boat, but close to the Front Stoop is where we are listening to Pat Humphries.
We can worship this ground on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. On this journey through thoughts and feelings, finding intuition, my head, my heart, I am gathering the tools together. I'm preparing to do my part. All of those who come before me, band together and be my guide. Loving lessons that I will follow. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living in the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together. Some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pat Humphrey.
And we understand very, very well the concept of copyright, and are very, very grateful to the artistry and talent of Pat Humphries. And this particular song we thought was appropriate because we're actually floating on the water today.
We're floating on the water. We're using solar. We're using solar electric to run our batteries, our inverter, and our phones, and we're giving this great technology we actually come up with to try to use it to help humanity with this technology without hurting people. And you've been looking out the window when we first started the program.
Of our boat.
And I was wondering.
Little tiny houseboat.
We have a little tiny houseboat that we can stay on. And Dennis Carius is with us. Hello, Dennis. Are you there?
Hello, Jeff. Hello, Susan.
Hi, Dennis.
Well, you sound awful low for some reason.
Oh,
I sound low?
No, he's fine.
Okay, and that's Susan to my right, and then are you? Can you see us on your video now?
Well, I tried refreshing the screen, but unfortunately, it's the same show that we did last week.
Well, try it again because we're now doing it.
It's very interesting. I wanted to re-clarify what Jeff said when we just started speaking, that we're in a little boat. We have solar panels on the roof, I think 4 of them.
4 of them, yeah.
And they run all of our electronics, and they, of course, the computer is being run. The phones are picking up the phone is picking up the internet from satellite.
Right.
And we're everything on this boat, like the refrigeration, our little toaster, our little
we just
microwave.
Had a kayak going
and
back.
You're right. There's a kayaker going by. That's cool. So that things are going on around us in the water, and but everything we're doing is directly being powered by the sun right now. And we heard an interesting piece on the radio this morning where they're saying, we could get 90% renewables and all this, but who's, quote, going to pay for it? And that's not a stopping point. That's not not a problem.
Yeah, the thing is, how much, and they were also talking about
they're
how much.
Making that the end of the discussion, and then they kind of laugh cynically, and then they go off with music.
But the reality is that if we had a war where you had people trying to take your life, they wouldn't ask that question, who's going to pay for it? You would just make sure you defend yourself. Well, we're in a war.
Right, we're in an economic.
It's an economic war that are killing people, and they're trying to. And the problem is that it doesn't matter who pays for it. It's got to be done.
No, and the money is available.
And it's not real. It's not real money.
Any amount of money can be printed for whatever needs to be done. And then we're talking about the minimum wage too. And okay, if we raise the minimum wage, then the businesses are just going to raise their wages, and then they're just going to charge us more. So this is a cycle that so they say, okay, well, nothing can be done. We got to just, we can't raise the minimum. Well, that's not the case. If the companies can pay themselves more, then where are they? There's always more money
is
coming into the system desired. And it's just a question of, here comes another boat. You may want to show that to give people an idea.
We're on
that
the
we're
water
definitely
now.
on the water.
We're on the Front Stoop. This is Sunday on the Front
But
Stoop you're listening to.
We're on a very watery
stoop.
And here's
somebody going by in a boat here.
Well, you'll see it pretty soon.
You should see them coming through. Here they come. There they come through on the boat.
Usually they wave. There they are.
And anyway, so they don't realize they're on the boat. They don't realize they're on camera. Videotaped.
Well, they may have.
But anyway,
if they're observant.
I want to bring out some house cleaning, some housekeeping, housekeeping, I guess. This is Bridges Programming. This is Sunday on the Front Stoop. It's brought to you by the Human Renewable Energy Measure. And eventually we'll get this set up, so we'll just pop a website up there. But and the
we
reason
do that when we're at home.
We're at home, but now we don't have that. So I'm going to try to bring it out to you. It's called theTHEHREM.org.
Stands for
Human Renewable Energy Measure.org. We also have a nonprofit called RenewTheEarth.org, and that's renew_the_earth.org. And Bridges Programming, of course, is bridgesprogramming.com.
And that's where all of these programs are broadcast and then streamed from there into other audio outlets.
So we're getting according to we only have one follower, but we have a lot of people viewing this. We have 3,000 views so far, which is good on this.
Because we just started using this venue, and we're very pleased
something new with it.
With how much opportunity it gives us for different, pictures. It's neat. I mean, we're not interesting to look at, but if we go to interesting places, we can show you what we're looking at. That'll,
Right. So, I just want to bring that.
Making a mobile studio now. That's what this is about, making our studio mobile.
HREM.org. Dennis, can you did you get it refreshed yet by some chance?
Well, right now I'm still working on it, and believe me, in the next 52 minutes, I'm sure I'll have this.
Okay, that's great.
Well, let me know, so I'll give you a view of what I'm just curious to know how the camera is picking up the island. We're anchored next to an island.
The mainland and an island, and so we're kind of protected in here.
And
this
I
is
would
where
like you to see that if possible.
We were anchored all night,
right?
So we're hanging on an anchor, which is boating lingo. It's the hook.
And I want to explain that we're
hanging on a hook.
We're not hooked up to electricity at all. We are running this. We're running the entire program
with the sun,
solar powered, battery operated,
directly
back up with
our
110 volts. Our computer's plugged into the boat, which is 110 volts, based on solar and an inverter. The telephone, which is we're using as a hotspot to transmit to the satellite.
It's amazing. I mean, we're connected to outer space too.
And
the sun is, of course, outer space,
the sun.
But two places.
We are on a spaceship. The sun is our supply ship.
And the our energy supplier.
Supplier.
Right. And of course, the distance of the sun is much greater than our satellites.
Right. And we have another camera, not a good one. We tried it. We're just checking this out. And this camera I can switch over now to show you what's going on outside. So if Dennis, if anybody's watching this, you'd see the water and the island, and sometimes a boat will go by.
But the contrast is very high because the camera can't adjust very well. This one's sort of.
And then you'll see us sitting in here on
has a limited ability
on our Front Stoop picnic table here. But the Front Stoop,
and you can see out the windows around the boat. You can see the water out the windows in the high contrast.
Were you able to get it, Dennis?
Yes. I got it on the screen. I see
So-
both of you.
Are
Okay.
you feeling a
Okay.
little seasick yet?
You see now? I'm
Well,
gonna.
now you just flipped the camera so that I could see the river, correct?
Yes.
Do you see
Right.
you see the Hudson there, the Mohawk?
The Mohawk River. I don't see the Hudson yet.
Okay,
No,
I'm
no,
gonna-
we're
I'm
not
gonna-
on the Hudson.
I'm going to
We're
put
on
you
the Mohawk.
back onto the Mohawk for a minute.
Jeff misspoke.
I'm going to in the Mohawk. I'm just going to put you back on there, and you'll let me know when you're seeing that, because right now you should see us from the delay. There's a delay on this.
Actually, we're getting better contrast now. Maybe the sun is shifting
Good
to a
point.
different angle. So you see the shadows in the
Yes.
water.
Now you should be seeing the water and the island now.
And this is
Okay.
all, Dennis, this is all coming to you through the sun.
The solar energy
not-
is giving us all this stuff with man's mind and technology. In other words,
We are
the
not
human-
plugged into
the
any.
human renewable energy, which is man's mind from the sun, is giving us this technology. Go ahead.
Now I see Mohawk.
Right.
Mhm.
It just
And,
flipped.
Does it
and
look good on the air? Or is it very, very shiny?
well, it's shiny.
Oh,
I'm sure he's
well,
seen
the
what.
Mohawk looks very good. I see the water moving.
Mhm. That's the boat moving and the water moving, right, in the wind, right.
See, the boat is on an anchor,
So
and the wind is blowing us around, just like we're panning the island. You notice that?
we're actually drifting. Our stern is going back and forth like a pendulum, very, very slowly as we hang on a hook.
We're going to get a better camera for when we're out doing this, so you can see the different places.
And there's no extension cord coming from the land, Dennis. We're totally water all around us. We're not plugged in
We
anywhere.
are totally on solar power and battery.
Right.
Wow, you don't have an extension cord all the way
No,
over.
no,
Nothing.
we're not cheating. We're not cheating.
That's good.
Were you able to show this to Maureen?
Yeah, I did. Maureen, she's actually looking at it this instant.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Hello,
I'm gonna-
Maureen.
we're going to switch over to a different view, though, and then Susan's going to try to discuss what she wrote notes for this week,
2 days ago.
and she'll give a summary of what we're talking about today. But I just want to let you know that this technology is available. It's nothing new. We just want to make sure that all human beings should have the availability of technology that's better for the planet, helps humanity. We stop killing people. And that's in my opinion, that's very, very important.
And
We'll-
Susan,
Yeah.
can I just start reading this? I see it right on the screen.
Oh, yeah. Go right ahead. And that's the summary
And
that
then you
was
can just, okay, good. And when I stop, and you can continue. Here we go. Ready?
all set.
Continuing our conversation about Buckminster Fuller's book, Critical Path. We are reading gradually through it and commenting on his thoughtful and far-seeing ideas. We feel that his thoughts need to be with us at this critical point in our history.
All right. I did write that.
Right.
That's all my fault.
Thank you.
Dennis.
You do great writing.
Oh,
Thank you.
well, thank you for that nice thought. Well, we're on, I was just thinking what we're really on is a floating stoop today.
That's right.
We're on a floating stoop. You could hang your feet out if you sat on the stern ladder there and stick your feet in the water right now.
And people have been driving by. One came by with a
Mhm.
kayak earlier. We have it. If you look back on the video, you'll see the person in the kayak, and then a boat passed by, and we took a picture of them. So you can see people coming to the front stoop, which is sort of fun. And it's a front stoop on the water. And by the way, as we get through global warming or climate change, whatever
Get
you want to
deeper
call it,
into global warming.
right, we'll find that there's many people sitting with water on their front stoop.
Oh, that's true. There are more front stoops that are watery.
So
That's true.
as the sun,
Yeah.
as the water goes up and rises,
Yeah.
and people start getting displaced, there may be 4 foot higher, so 4 foot higher, maybe water on their front stoop. which is sort of a fun thing to think about, but it's also awfully scary because
A
it
lot of
changes your way of
civilization
life.
is along the waters.
Right, like Venice, for instance.
Well, because that was the first areas that were populated because of commerce.
Yeah, they needed
So
to have water to
the
get
cities
by. Right?
are, right there.
And then
water's
according
edge.
to Buckminster Fuller, the pirates started out, and that's the 1% today, the pirates, or the 0.1% today, who are killing the rest of us because they want to make money and not help humanity. So that's what this human renewable energy measure is. I'm going to put back the view of the Front Stoop now, and this is Sunday on the Front Stoop,
Right.
brought to you by Bridges
The
Programming.
watery stoop.
The watery stoop.
The floating stoop.
The floating stoop.
The floating stoop. That's, I think, a better description. We're floating.
So
on
you're
our
going to
stoop.
go ahead and talk a little bit more about.
I read ahead to, I think I'm in the 3rd chapter of Critical Path now. And around page 50, I copied a quote out of what I was reading. And I'll read it, and then you guys can comment on it. We can all comment.
Sure.
Okay, so here's according to Buckminster Fuller, and he's all the way back in the time of the when Egypt was in its glory. Quote, to get the pharaoh and all his equipment and riches safely into the next world, involving building a stone mountain on top of his burial chamber in the super stable form of a pyramid. This called for supreme engineering, designing, and large-scale building capability. Thus, it came about that the economic authority patronage that employed and subsidized the pyramid designing, architectures, engineering, and building efforts of the intuitive artist, scientist, poet, inventor, engineer, and initiator of the early Egyptian pyramid was exclusively the life hereafter of the pharaoh. Now, sometimes you have to read his stuff more than once, but what he's asserting here is that all of this creativity and designing and engineering and effort, labor effort and mental effort that was called upon in the population at the time when the pharaoh, wanted to go to the other world with all of his stuff, all of this was called upon exclusively because the life hereafter of the pharaoh. It was just his afterlife that marshaled all of this creativity and labor together. And when you look at it that way, a lot of the things that are so profound about what we've invented, the reason, the historical reason for these things to come, into being are kind of crazy and kind of nutty. I mean, it's just sending this pharaoh off to a afterlife, and
people who hoard stuff. And they hoard stuff, and they think that they're going to take it with them. Well, that's, I mean,
yeah, but
I don't know if
this has been going on since the pharaoh's time.
5,000 years ago,
yeah.
since the beginning of civilization. And the pharaohs came about. They were part of the pirates and the kings, and we made them pirates. We made them the pharaohs. We accepted them that they were pharaohs. They had very strong armies. So we were their slaves, and it's still that today. And that started 5,000 years ago. That's more than Christianity. And this is, again, which is interesting because now it's this Sunday on the Front Stoop, and the Pope is going to be here shortly. And he's talking about how the system is not working for most people, just like it hasn't worked for most people back in the time of the Pharaoh's days.
Well, it's interesting that the mentality and the vision that's organizing all the 99, if you want to call it the 99%, what you want to call it, slaves or creative energy, their ideas are so unimaginative compared to the types of inventiveness that comes forward because of the pressures that are brought to bear on the population.
I just want you.
And these are economic pressures that are brought to bear.
I just want to bring out another.
If you don't build my pyramid,
I'll
you die,
right?
And you don't get food,
right?
So the pressure is there but the idea that the Pharaoh has is so silly, you know, but it's bringing out the irony of it is it's bringing out this incredible creativity out of the masses that are being oppressed. And so you know, from building the pyramids, they invented a lever. They invented you know, yes, exactly. Right. But the thing is, all these things that later were used, you know, for others.
But everybody said, but when we talk about the human renewable energy measure, the HREM, Bucky brings this out too in his teachings, and I purposely put this on the screen now. They say that if people get their basic needs met for 1 hour of their work, they wouldn't do anything. And Bucky says, well, do you think a tree doesn't do anything, right, or a plant doesn't do anything?
Or the clouds are not doing anything.
Or the clouds aren't doing anything. They just sit there. And I want you to look at what's on the screen now, because you'll notice that we're looking at an island that is putting out air for us to breathe, oxygen, the trees, right, the water.
And it's filtering the carbon dioxide out.
Is the water that's on this, that we're floating on, is that not doing anything?
It's the environment for all the fish.
All organic things have basic value, and
we're organic, and we're functioning to a purpose that's extremely important to all the rest of the.
So that's why we like Bucky Fuller, because
things that are going on.
Bucky is saying things that we are saying, and that the Pope is saying. And actually, Bucky said this 50 years ago or more, and we didn't know about Bucky until recently. But he said we need a kilowatt hour based. All humanity has to be based on energy units. He used the kilowatt hour, but it doesn't matter what energy unit you need. And once we do that, then the pharaohs will sort of disappear, and the 1%ers will sort of disappear.
Well, once you take the emphasis of governing and authority out of the hands of just a small minority of our population, and spread, you know, the empowerment to everyone, to every individual, I mean, the amount of creativity that's going to surface is going to be incredible, I think, you know, and the solving of the things that on the news they just stop and then they play music because they can't figure out how to solve it, or they don't want to. They just leave things the way they are. All these problems that we're dealing with now, that we can't figure out where the wage should be, that we can't figure out what's too much to pay a CEO, you know, that we can't figure out how to go to energy technologies that are less polluting. These are things that we're stuck in because the premise that started them, like the building of a pyramid to get your stuff to another world, was so crazy and nutty, and we're still operating under that kind of premise. Actually, I wrote a little thing, and this is just me, and I'm not comparing what I say to Buckminster Fuller on any level, but this is what came to my mind after I read that paragraph that I just read out loud. So often inventiveness is stimulated by events that are crazy, taking all your stuff to an afterlife, or violent, like wars. The race to the moon was a race to the highest vantage point so that you could be more effective observing your enemies. But in each scenario, some important inventions were created. The lever, scaffolding, solar panels.
Right.
And now we're back to, here we are, broadcasting to you through the sun, from the sun through our solar panels.
Right.
And I mean, this is a crazy kind of thing that we've set up a premise like you got to build pyramids, or you got to have wars, you know, from a very limited vantage point and lack of imagination, really, and initiated all the creativity of the rest of the population to accomplish things that are really not worth accomplishing. They're not worth accomplishing. So what if we had something that really is worth accomplishing?
Well,
like going, and yes, we have the technology to do clean energy, and we could do 80 to 90% of our energy that way.
And just
Let's
do it.
Do it.
Don't,
that should be our premise.
Not where does the money come from.
Right.
If you can do it,
that doesn't
do
stop
it. You print the money to
Right.
do that, and you just agree that we're doing it around the world, and you've changed the world.
I mean, Germany's pretty much done 30% already, and they're saying
they can do
that
90%.
they can do 90%, that it's possible. I mean, we got in our hands already the solution for
look at
at
all
least
the things we're doing.
Generations
look at all the things we're doing that doesn't do any good for society. For instance, how many times do you sit at a traffic light and wait for the light to change, and there's 100 people sitting at a traffic light with all those motors running, and each motor, let's say, is 100 horsepower. So you got all these horses bucking, and we're wasting all that energy at a traffic light to move us to a job that isn't going to benefit humanity one bit. It's going to benefit a lawsuit that doesn't mean anything. It's not going to help the person who's suing because they got hurt or something like that. Why don't we use that technology? It's cheaper to keep people home and let them use the technology we have and get them paid so they have their basic needs met than put them into jobs they can't stand, and they're spending their life wait to retire, and they're not doing anything productive for humanity. A humanitarian job that helps all humanity around the world. Why are we doing this kind of insanity? That's for people to make money, for the top small percentage, the small pharaohs or the kings or the 1%ers, if you want to call them that, or the pirates, as Bucky calls them. This has been going on forever, for the last not forever, but since civilization started.
And I this is me again, and I don't mean to, but this to try to recreate a thought that I had spontaneously, and I wrote it down anyway, so I'll just read it. Originally, 99% of humanity was utilized to prepare the container that would take the pharaoh and the wealthy to the perfect heaven with their stuff. Now, this same percentage of population is providing the heaven on earth for the economically privileged, much more efficient and realistic, less metaphysical solution. I mean, we've kind of said, okay, that's kind of crazy, really crazy. I mean, building a pyramid to take my stuff to heaven. Why don't I just hoard my stuff here and all my money and all my
bank,
and put it in a bank
and
benefit from it through my life and give it to my children.
The money, look at it this way. The pyramid at least was a structure. I don't know if it was beautiful, but it was a structure. And they put all these beautiful works of art in there, and they put what they felt was valuable to them in there. But it had no real value to humanity. But yet it killed people while they were building these things. They literally killed their servants and brought the servants with them. They embalmed this.
And the engineer too, it turns out.
And the engineer.
Whoever engineered and designed the thing, they go in there.
They go into the
there
hole
too, because they might give away what the secret chambers are about.
Right. So this is all insanity. And we're doing the same insanity today.
Nothing has changed. It's just we have more technology. We have what we would call a more sophisticated type of life style. But the very, very wealthy are still killing people around the world to get more and more stuff that they're going to hoard in things that have no value for humanity. And this is what I'm finding out. And when you think about it, if you can open your mind up and think about this, yes, and the only way I think we could change this is putting, just like we put, just 400 years ago, we named gravity and we measured it. And I'm saying we have to evolve to a point where all human beings have to have their basic needs met for 1 hour of labor because of technology and natural resources. And they have to have their education, food, and shelter for that 1 hour of their life a day. Get rid of minimum wage because there's no such a thing. Get rid of and have you don't need minimum wage. You need a living wage, which is based on energy units. And you don't need welfare because everybody's going to have their basic needs met. That means you'll stop most of the wars. That means you can just print money up to help humanity. And then when the
solar panels are the efficient, everything is done efficiently for humanity, you destroy the money so it doesn't create inflation. It's really simple. I just don't know how to bring that about, but you are listening to Bridges program.
And we're halfway through
Sunday
the
on the
program
Front
right now.
Stoop.
But we're not going to take a break, right?
No, we're
This
listening to Sunday on the Front Stoop, and then we have Wednesday morning.
And we're on
We
our
have
floating
Wednesday
stoop.
World Call In, and if we're on the boat, we'll definitely try to do this again with a little more sophistication, and
Just a little,
little
not
more.
much.
And then we also have Dennis Carius with us Wednesday and Sunday. Friday night we do Bridges programming, talking about strictly the HREM, human
7 to 9.
renewable energy measure, from 7 to 9. We
Yeah.
normally have a guest on that as well, and someone who does most of the talking. And then we also do Paul Marco's program is on Saturday from I think it's 11 to 1. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
and they do their program, and they do that from Ecuador. And we're trying to get more programmings on. So remember, there's 3 websites to look at for this. This is called bridgesprogramming.com. Renew the Earth, which is a nonprofit group that we've started many years ago, and we're involved with it still.
go.
And that-
It's .org, and you can
Renew
just type that in; it'll come up. .org, and if there's a lot of letters there to children about how to go out and enjoy nature and do experiments that might interest them. Called the Earthlings.
And then, of course, we have THEHERM.org, theherm.org, and that's the impetus to promote that concept across get it into the language. It's not a thing you do. It's a concept like gravity. It's an obvious thing. All human beings, for 1 hour of their life's work a day, would have their basic needs met. However, most people will want more than their basic needs, and they'll decide how hard or how least they want to work.
Or how they want to educate
they want to
themselves
educate
so that they can make a contribution to society.
So that's the story. Dennis, do you have anything to say? We're about halfway through the programming.
Well, regarding something that you and Susan were talking about earlier, I just read something that said Big Oil says we will have solar when they can put a meter on the sun, which is kind of a joke.
Well, that's the old school economics that we're suffering under now. Everything has to be monetized. Everything has to become scarce so that it can be even more expensive. It's a rationing, you against me type of attitude. Everyone has to be in competition for scarce jobs, scarce resources, and this is the lie of our economic system. It's the big lie that we're living under now.
Something just came to mind when you said that, Dennis, and I wonder if I can bring that up. And when Susan said scarcity, what the very wealthy figured out was if they can build institutions like colleges and schools and charge people to get to those colleges and give them degrees, then the more they charged, the more scarce that degree would be, and the less people you'd have as doctors and engineers. So only the wealthy people and the wealthy families can actually have that kind of education. So you're limiting the amount of people. So you're creating a false need for the educated people who believe that they have the degree. But the degree is set up to make scarcity, to make sure you pay the doctor or the specialist more, so there's less of those doctors. However, in a poverty-stricken nation like Cuba, for instance, the education is free, so everybody really does have a chance at learning what they choose to learn. And I think that's a very important thing to understand. I don't know if did that make sense to you?
Yes, I think that's very interesting. I think that years ago, countries tried to do this over in Europe. There was Italy and Germany. A lot of countries tried to do what we're talking about. And I think that that's what caused World War I and World War II, because people didn't want to do that, do you think we did the right thing in sending our troops across the ocean, over the ocean? Why did we do
I have
that?
a comment here from Buckminster Fuller about specialization, which you
Go
were
ahead.
talking about before. As each of these men are given special tasks to do for life, the king says to them all, quote, each of you mind only your own business. You, Mr. Language Man, mind only your own business. You, Mr. Sword Maker, mind only your own business. And you, Mr. Arithmetic, mind only your own business. Each one minds only his own business. I'm the only one that minds everyone's business. Is that perfectly clear? Yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. So this is divide and conquer, but this is divide and conquer among the specialists and the people who the king or the power structure depends upon. And by not allowing them to speak to each other, and he's then controlling all the information, and there's no way for the information that is being refined by each specialist to then relate to other refined information and become something bigger, better, more useful to humanity. And this is in chapter 3, where Buckminster Fuller starts to explore the idea of human power structures and how they started. And that's really very interesting. I could read some of that too if you want to. I'm sure, he says here, I'm sure that amongst the earliest of human beings, every once in a while, a man was born much bigger than the others. He didn't ask to be, but there he was. And because he was bigger, people would say, each in their own esoteric language, quote, Mister, will you please reach one of those bananas for me because I can't reach them, unquote. The big one obliges. Later, the little people would say, hey, mister, people over there have lost all their bananas and they're dying of starvation, and they say they are going to come over here and kill us to get our bananas. You're big. You go out in front and protect us. And he would say, okay, and successfully protect them. The big one found his bigness continually being exploited. He could say to the little ones, quote, between these battles protecting you, I would like to get ready for the next battle. You could help make up some weapons and things. And the people said, all right, we'll make you king. Now, you tell us what to do. So the big man becomes king quite logically. He could have become so in either a bullying or good-natured way. But the fact is that he was king simply because he was not only the biggest and the most physically powerful, but also the most skillful and clever big one.
That's exactly what happened. We made, as a society, we made the 1%ers. They didn't just happen. We made them. We accepted that. And we're still accepting it to this day. But we changed the thing to voting. We're saying, oh, if we vote this guy in because he's got a clever way of manipulating the system with his money, like in this case, we're looking at a 2016 election with Donald Trump, who's a really stupid man, in my opinion, because he doesn't help humanity. He just tries to make more money and uses money for power. And then you have someone like Bernie Sanders, who the mainstream media is trying to push out, and he's trying to help humanity. Now he doesn't have the measurement right, and even the Pope doesn't have the measurement because they haven't thought of it yet. We're just a small group of people who say, wait a second, we think we found it.
And it's only in economics that this is
only
necessary.
in economics. You need to change the economic system so people like Trump don't monopolize the system.
And the conversation.
What he does is he uses his money to make sure there's lots of food around for everybody to come and drink and eat, and then the media picks up on that because individuals love the idea
of a party.
Forget about, I don't think they love freedom. That's just a word. I don't think they love.
There's a feeding frenzy going on over there.
I don't think the greed and freedom and well, what's the other words we use? Freedom and democracy. These are all words. They mean nothing. But the food and drink. My God, man, that's what you got to have to eat, and that really is very much down to physical reality. So that's the problem we're running into now, is that people have not figured out that there are certain words that are feelings, and there are certain things that are actually physical things that we must deal with. So physics is the game, and that's why we need to have the human renewable energy measure. THE,
things that are real, things that
are physically real that
right.
we can measure, and we
that
can measure
affect
them
our
in
lives
energy
and
units,
our survival
right?
on
Not in currency, not in dollars.
I'll read on a little bit of the scenario here.
By the way, this is a book that's called
Critical Path
by Buckminster Fuller, and it's a very, you don't really read Buckminster Fuller.
You have to think about
study Buckminster
right.
Fuller.
And actually, it was recommended to us that you do it with several people so
Right.
that you can interact about it. And so we're starting it out that way, and we're inviting anyone to comment on what
On Bucky's path.
what we're talking about on here, and also what
I want to get Dennis's opinion though about the kings. Do you understand, Dennis, what he's saying about how we made the kings?
Well, actually, that was one king,
Yes.
but I'll show you how it turns into many kings,
Yes.
according to Buckminster Fuller.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm real happy that you're reading this. And another person who's doing great work, I think, is the Pope. Next month,
yeah.
he's going to be coming to New York City.
Well,
He's actually coming to our area too, from what I understand. He'll be in the I think he's coming to the sanctuary for
well, we don't know. Nobody knows where the Pope is going to go.
yeah,
He's
they're holding
very
that pretty
spontaneous.
Well,
Right.
Susan's going to read a little further on about more kings and where they came from.
Well, yeah, and Buckminster Fuller is saying here, every once in a while along would come another big man.
Right.
Mr. King, you've got all of these things too easy around here. I'm going to take it away from you, he says. A big battle ensues between the two, and after the king has his challenger pinned down on his back, he says, Mister, you were trying to kill me to take away my kingdom, but I'm not going to kill you because you'd make a good fighter, and I need good fighters around here to cope with the enemies who are coming. So I'm going to let you up now if you promise to fight for me. But don't you ever forget, I can kill you, okay? The man assents, and so the king lets him up. But instinctively the king says secretly to himself, I mustn't ever allow two of these big guys to come at me together. I can lick any one of them, but only one at a time. The most important initial instinct of the most powerful individual or of his organized power structure is divide to conquer, and to keep conquered, keep divided. So our special case king has now successfully defended his position against two or more big guys who are all good fighters. He makes one of them Duke of Hill A, the second one Duke of Hill B, the third Duke of Hill C, and tells each one to, quote, mind your own business, because only the king minds everybody's business. And he has his spies watch them so that they can't gang up on him.
Does that sound like the NSA?
Thus, our considered king is doing very well in his tribe defending battles.
Does that make sense to you too, Dennis, or does it just make sense to me?
Yes. Yes. And what do you mean when you say NSA? What does that stand for?
National
Security. What?
Association
or something.
And it called for it used to be called non-security association.
No security.
No security association. They were trying to pretend it wasn't there, so they call it the NSA.
Oh.
And now finally they admit it is there. So that's an interesting thought process too.
Yeah.
Just point of information.
So here's what's happening in the rest of the population while the kings are fighting it out. And this is Buckminster Fuller again. However, there are a lot of little non-fighting people who are not obeying the king regarding preparations for the next fighting period. The king says to his henchmen, seize that mischievous little character over there who is really being a nuisance around here. To the prisoner, the king says, I'm going to have to cut off your head. The man says, Mr. King, you'd make a big mistake to cut my head off. The king asks, why? Well, I'll tell you, Mr. King, I understand the language of your enemy over the hill, and you don't. And I heard him say what he's going to do to you when he ends it. Young man, you've got a good idea at last. You let me know every day what my enemy over the hill says he's going to do, and so forth, and your head is going to stay on. In addition, you're going to do something else you've never done before. You're going to eat regularly, right up here in the castle near me, and I'm going to have you wear a royal purple jacket so that I can keep track of you. The king now has that little man under control and useful. Then another little man makes trouble for the king, and he is about to be beheaded. He shows the king that he understands metallurgy and can make better swords than anybody else. The king says, "You better make a good sword in a hurry." The man makes a beautiful, super strong, sharp sword. There's no question about that. So the king says, "Okay, your head stays on. You too are to live here in the castle."
And then he has people who work in the castle.
So he does, under the threat of beheadment, some people are able to come up with something the king really thinks is great, and he wants to keep them around.
You're listening to Buckminster Fuller, and actually this is called.
But still, the precedent is so silly.
But we're quoting out of Buckminster Fuller's book called what's the name of that book?
Critical Path.
Critical Path, and we're asking everybody to think about what's going on in the world now and how we can change that. And it's brought to you by the HREM, Human Renewable Energy Measure. You're listening to Bridges Programming.
And here's the last one that he wants to behead. Listen to what this one says. Under the threat of beheadment, another man making trouble for the king says, "The reason I'm able to steal from you is because I understand arithmetic, which you don't. If I do the arithmetic around here, people won't be able to steal from you." And the king makes him court mathematician. And that's what we've got. We've got an economic system where the arithmetic is only for the economic system and for the people running it. It's not the arithmetic that we learn in school. It's not the math that we're learning and using in our real lives. It's a math. It's a calculating system in economics that only serves the system itself and the elites that run it. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. And so, this mathematician, he's going to work for the king. So he's, one of the forerunners of the economic system that only is going to benefit the elites. It's going to make sure people think they're in a world of scarcity and you have to compete with each other, and that there's not enough jobs for everyone. We can't have our efforts, our work efforts, provide everyone, every living human with food, shelter, and education.
And by the way, only until about 400 A.D. After death, after Christ was sacrificed or killed or whatever, when they came out with the absolute zero, so you really couldn't even measure things back then because you didn't have a start point. And Buckminster Fuller brings that out in the early part of the books,
that was very important.
Very important to have an absolute zero.
The concept of zero, and you don't have that in economics at all. There's no concept of zero.
So we had no way of knowing when the Bible was written.
It's a floating value system.
We had no way of knowing when the Bible was written, or any of the economics, or any of the measurements, for that matter, how true they were, because they didn't have a start point, a zero. And the mathematicians didn't believe in zero. It was like an epiphany when they came up with zero, and that was only 400 AD. So that was only about maybe 2,000 years ago when we came up with a 0 point. Can you imagine, Dennis? Can you imagine trying to figure something out without having to have a 0 on a ruler? How do you measure something without a start point?
That's very interesting, Jeff, because to me, one of the first things I would think about would be a 0. if somebody says, how much food did you have today? If I had none at all, that is the number 0.
But you don't know that. You don't know it's none because they didn't have a 0.
Well, none, or whatever you want to call it. You can call it 0 or none, none of the above. To me, it's very simple to understand 0, meaning none at all.
But they never put that into a measurement system. In other words, they didn't have a 0. So how did they ever measure anything?
That's interesting. I would think that 0 would be the very first number that any child born would come up with when by the time they're 2 or 3 years old, they would know the number 0.
Right, but they did not. They never put that into the educational mathematics system. They never had a 0, a nothing point, which is obvious. These are obvious things
until about 800 AD.
Yeah, about 4800 AD, if I don't remember exactly.
No, and nobody,
but no
so
one,
far back.
But that's, as you said, it's the most obvious thing. If you have no food to eat, you're going to starve. So this was obvious, but our society, our human society, didn't bring that forth until 800 AD. And it was brought forth by
an Arab.
the Arabic nations, Arabic people, because they were thinking about the Arabic the numbers, and that they started with 0, but no one else did that. So before, when the Bible was written, they had no way of measuring anything. When the pharaohs were there, they had no way of really measuring anything. It was just really amazing to me that. So we finally evolved into that spot.
They actually. In another part of Buckminster Fuller's book, he mentions the creation of, around 800 AD, the creation of the idea of the 0, and an individual that brought it forth, Al-Khwarizmi, and he's credited with the, bringing the concept out of obscurity where it was developing. And that actually didn't become known in Europe until probably, and this is, you never know, these dates could be here or there by a couple of hundred years, but he's asserting in his book that it was around 1200 AD before that concept reached northern Italy and southern Germany by way of Carthage, which is in North Africa. Probably through trade routes, and we talked about this in a previous program. Right, but that's a very important concept. And anyway, there's an interesting quote, another interesting quote here. We have about 7 minutes. I'll read about the great pirates. If you want.
Sure.
And this is Buckminster Fuller talking about the great pirates. Because Earth had been discovered by its high seas masters, and these are the great pirates.
This is the 1%ers, by the way, the great pirates.
In other words, the people that were out there with the big boats and circumnavigating. It had been discovered by its high seas masters to be a closed and finite system. The great pirate venturers who controlled the seas took their scientists around the world to discover and disclose to them its exploitable resources. Only because the Earth constituted a closed system could the scientists inspect, in effect, all the species, and only thus was Charles Darwin able to develop the closed system theory of evolution of species. Such a theory could not have existed before that. It would have had to include dragons and sea serpents. All the people in all the previous open-edged empires, meaning the flat world, lived in a system within whose infinity anything could happen or exist. So before we could begin to even think about what was on Earth, we had to understand that we were living on a finite planet.
And this is what's happening today. And we talk about outer space, or we talk about the supernatural, or we talk, people enjoy getting away from where we are now to going to the supernatural or the metaphysical world. And that's the problem. We need to focus on the physical world right now. I'm not saying you shouldn't focus on the dream world or the la la land, as I call it, that these things could be happening. But there's a physical problem here. And if we focus on where we're going to go to outer space, 1,000 years from now or 5 or next year or whatever, we haven't fixed the problem here with the physical problems we're having on this planet. We have to stop killing one another here. We have to start taking into account that we have to move to a physical number of 0, or start point, that all humanity must have their basic needs met physically. And we have to realize that money or the economic system has no real value. It's up there, that clock.
That's all right. You don't have to watch what I'm doing.
But anyway, so this is a.
And I want to go on to what Buckminster Fuller is saying about this closed spherical planet, this closed system that we live on. That the significance of that, once people realized it way the heck back when, they also suppressed that, like they suppressed the idea of the 0 because it was so very important. And here's why it was so very important. And this is Buckminster Fuller's words again. This is not taught in school, even today. Quote, "It seems strange that we are not taught about the historical, philosophical, and economic significance of the foregoing transition from an open flat to a closed sphere world system, because the churches were so strong and the great pirates wished to obscure both their monopoly of the riches of the now limited system and their grand world strategy for its control. The significance of the concept of a closed world system was popularly unrealized. The power structure and its patronized educational systems, quote, let well enough alone." Because it was better for them to allow most of the people to believe the world is flat. There are sea serpents everywhere that are going to eat you up. Do you want to show what's going by on the water right now?
Okay, we're going to go on
so that people realize we're floating on our stoop today.
We're floating on our stoop today. Let me know.
And but this is such a profound thing, and it's just like we're still in a flat world according to Buckminster Fuller, because we talk about sunrise and sunset. This is only possible with a flat world to have a concept of the sun coming up and the sun going down. What we're doing is we're orbiting the sun, and we should be referring to the appearance of the sun or disappearance of the sun as an eclipse when it disappears,
right,
or a sighting of it when it appears. And so he wanted to use words and phrases for, and we shouldn't, we also use the expression to all corners of the earth, right? Yeah, that's a flat world type of reference. We have a lot of things in our language that keep reinforcing kind of a fantasy world of what's possible. And at this point, it's a very dangerous thing.
We're signing out. You're listening to Pat Humphries now. This is her on Hands is the name of the album. And we are leaving shortly. So thank you all for listening to us. And we're on the stoop of our boat, and you're sitting in the Mohawk River.
We're floating.
And that's what you're seeing.
And you're getting this via sun. This
solar power.
Totally sun power. No plugging into
this
fossil.
This is the HREM.org. Please listen, tune in that. Dennis, thank you.
Bye, Dennis.
Never recognizing when we arrive. Loving spirits will live together. We're all spinning to the other side. We are living in the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together. Some in power, some in pain. We can
worship the sound.
Round we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side.